Hello everyone, I hope you're well and staying safe out there, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you my recap and thoughts on episode 10 of the Korean drama Mystic Pop-Up Bar, currently on Netflix. A lot is revealed in this episode and it looks like some of my theories are in fact correct and true, and some of the things I thought were going to happen they happened, they just didn't happen when I thought they were going to happen. Does that make sense? So with that very weird intro, let's get into what happened in this episode. The episode starts with a flashback to the past, and we see the queen threatening Woo-ju and telling her to stay away from her son, and then her telling her son, the crown prince, that it's time for him to marry and she has someone picked out for him, and that he needs to forget about Woo-ju and get her out of his mind forever or she'll do it for him. After seeing this go down in the past, we then are taken back to the present, where we see the woman who had called out to the guys in the street, and it seems that she recognized the crown prince, who we find out is Gui, and she recognized him because she is his mother reincarnated. So it's the queen, and she also looks like the queen. She tells Gui that she had been in a coma, and when she came out of it, she had memories of her past life, and that's how she was able to recognize him, even though he was in spirit form and didn't look like what he did when he was alive. She said she could see that it was him because of his eyes, and also she's his mother, so who wouldn't recognize their son? After them catching up and Gui mentioning that he is still in the spirit world and hadn't been reincarnated, the queen is still happy to hear that he found Woo-ju in the end and that they were reunited, since she feels really bad for what she did in her past life, now knowing that what she did was really wrong, and this is when she apologizes to Gui for everything that went down. We also find out in this episode how Gui ended up with Woo-ju at the pop-up bar, and apparently he's only been working with her for a year now. We see in a scene him when he's first in the spirit realm and find out that he beheaded his friend Won-young, who's the evil spirit that we know, and that after that he killed himself after Woo-ju died. While there and being sentenced by the god of the underworld, he demands to be with Woo-ju, and God is like, no, you are not royalty down here, you do what I say. The god of the underworld does end up going a little lighter on the crown prince's sentence, since even though he did kill someone, killing Won-young when he did saved a lot of souls from being killed in the future by him. So because of this and the fact that he's a skilled warrior and has never hesitated to fight against injustice, she sentences him to repent for his sins by working for the Afterlife Police Agency. After working for the police for 500 years and paying off his sins, instead of getting reincarnated, he took some time off and became Woo-ju's manager at the pop-up bar, and he's been helping her the past year complete her quota and has been living that life with her in secret, with her not knowing who he really is. All because he wants to make sure she's okay. But after spending time with her and hearing what she remembers of her past, he hasn't told her who he is because obviously she's got some pretty negative feelings towards him. So he kind of feels like her not knowing is really the best way for him to help her at this point. So we find this out and his decision to not tell her by the queen asking him why Woo-ju doesn't know who he is. That same evening, we start to get a little hint from Woo-ju that Yurin is the Cinnabar, since she starts to push Kang-bae into trying to be with her, like, don't give up on Yurin. And Kang-bae is a little confused by this, since before Woo-ju had said that she thought Yurin was the type to string guys along and that Kang-bae should give up on her. And now she's kind of changing her tune and is like, oh, I meant that as a compliment. It's then confirmed the next day because we see Woo-ju at the store and she catches Yurin checking in on Kang-bae through the customer service window and decides to try and push them together by telling Yurin that she obviously likes Kang-bae, and newsflash, Kang-bae likes her too, and they should just get together. Like, what's the big deal? You guys obviously like each other. Let's make this happen. Yurin is totally weirded out by this whole interaction and kind of calls her crazy and walks away. And this is when Gui shows up and figures out what Woo-ju is up to, and that Yurin is the Cinnabar reincarnated, which Woo-ju is at first really like, oh crap, you're not supposed to know that, it's a secret, but then decides, you know what, I'm gonna say you figured it out on your own, it wasn't my fault. Let's work together to make this happen. Woo-ju and Gui try to help bring Yurin and Kang-bae together by trying to show Yurin what kind of boyfriend material Kang-bae can be by one, making him attempt to open a jar that they glued shut and he's unable to do it. That's supposed to be showing off his muscles and he failed at that, and then Yurin's like, let me help you, and opens it up. And this is a surprise since Gui's like, I glued it. And that's when they decide they need to take a different approach since she's not a normal girl. Muscles is not really gonna help Kang-bae win her over in this situation. Woo-ju decides to read some stories from an online site where girls talk about how they fall for guys, and they use those storylines to then create scenarios in the store that are similar to what they read online. And this was such a cute, funny scene because as she's pulling it out, explaining to Gui what this site is all about, Gui like runs over to sit next to her and read. I think not only to get some pointers himself, to maybe get Woo-ju to fall in love with him since we now know he's the crown prince, but also I think he's just like, oh, this is interesting, like this is maybe on the right track. They create some very funny, weird scenarios that obviously fail, and they kind of give up on that idea. And then later that evening, they are trying to give Kang-bae more advice as to how to win Yurin over. And Gui decides to give him a joke to tell her because girls also like funny guys. I mean, comedians end up marrying very beautiful celebrities because they're funny. So Gui then decides to tell him a very inappropriate joke that causes Woo-ju to try to strangle and kill him. And Gui escapes barely and decides to run away, saying he's gonna take the trash out. While he's out, the queen decides to come visit the bar and see Woo-ju as well as Gui, and Woo-ju immediately loses her shit because of the fact that this person looks exactly like the queen. And Kang-bae doesn't know anything about this. He just recognizes her as the woman that he saw with Gui the other night and doesn't know why Woo-ju's so upset. So when Woo-ju starts to kind of yell at her, doesn't want to offer her any food, Kang-bae's like, what's going on, man? And Woo-ju does try to explain to him how she looks exactly like somebody who had hurt her in her past and how she just can't look at this woman. And all the while, the queen pretends to not know what Woo-ju is talking about and obviously doesn't tell her that she is the queen and that she remembers Woo-ju. Before she gets kicked out, Gui comes back in with Death and comes up with an excuse as to who this woman is and how they know each other and that she's not the queen. This is also when Gui explains everything to his mother and how Woo-ju doesn't know he's the crown prince when he has another kind of moment with her, and how he doesn't plan to tell her and he just wants to help her meet her quota so that she can be reincarnated. The next day at the store, Kang-bae and Yurin do end up growing a little closer after one of the guys she had liked shows up with his girlfriend and recognizes her while she's there at work. Shocked that she's able to be around all these people and not give them the creeps, he starts talking about how creepy she had been back in the day, and his girlfriend shows up and he's telling her how this woman is the reason that I was so scared of affection, but you fixed that for me, new girlfriend, and just basically being so rude to her and just embarrassing her in a public setting, calling her creepy. Kang-bae, overhearing this, intervenes, telling the guy to apologize for being rude to his girlfriend while holding her hand and pretty much showing that there's nothing wrong with her and that maybe he's the problem, and tells them to leave. Later in the episode, we see Kang-bae take Yurin to get some cake over lunch to cheer her up. They both share their experiences with not being able to touch people and how alone they felt all their lives. This is also when Kang-bae reveals to her about his issue, kind of, and how when he was in the orphanage, he was called the cursed boy. This is also when Kang-bae clears up the misunderstanding Yurin had about what he had said in regards to the fact that he didn't feel anything when she touched him, and that what he really meant was he was happy that when she touched him, that nothing bad happened to her. And then he says, how could I not like you? You know, you're amazing. Shyly, of course, and very sweet. With this confession, Yurin decides to confess her feelings to him as well and tells him that she's going to like him. So things are going good on that front. That's good to know. That evening, while Death, Kongbei, and Gui are at the pop-up bar, Kongbei ends up telling Gui about Wooju and the contract she signed with Samson. When Gui hears about this, he goes to confront Wooju and try to stop it from happening, since this means she'll never be reincarnated, and if that's the case, what has she been doing this whole time? While that's happening, we get a very interesting development in regards to Death. Remember how he was acting suspicious last episode, and it seemed like he was suddenly trying to stop Wooju from helping her customer, and I thought maybe he had just decided to work with his son and kind of changed sides, but nay, it seems the guy who's been hanging around at the bar this whole episode and last episode wasn't actually Death, but Won-young in disguise. We finally see what happened after Death took Won-young's hand, and it seems he took his father's energy and killed him. Kind of called that earlier. And right as they're leaving, Death arrives and is invited to join them. However, they make it seem like it isn't Death, and I'm kind of thinking that it's actually the evil spirit in disguise. While Gui is out talking with Wooju, we see Death visit the queen at her store and convinces her that she should try and help explain what happened in the past, and the best way to do that is to get Wooju to go into the dream world so the queen can show her what really happened, since Wooju doesn't know what happened to the prince or anything after she died. With this new plan in action, the reincarnated queen shows back up at the pop-up bar and tells her story, which is actually Wooju's story, to Wooju, who obviously commiserates and is like, here, you deserve a special drink. And they are taken into the queen's dream, where Wooju sees that she was right and that this was the queen reincarnated. She's taken to when the crown prince is getting ready to get married, and all she sees is that he's getting married and that he lived a happy life. And before she actually sees what happens after that, which seems to be the more important part of this whole story, Gui invades the dream and pulls her out, because she's obviously upset, and I think because he doesn't want her to know what really happened, because he knows it's going to affect her future choices in regards to meeting her quota and everything else. After Wooju wakes up the queen rather abruptly by splashing water on her face and kicking her out, Wooju and her have another one-on-one where he pretty much tells her to stay out of it and that she's not his mother anymore, like, we're done, stop trying to help. However, she does later on in the episode remember something that she feels she really needs to tell Gui about in regards to Wooju and just the overall situation and trying to help. But before she can do that, Won-young goes to her, still impersonating Death, and after explaining what he plans to do about Wooju and Gui, which is to send them both to hell, kills her so she can't tell Gui what she knows that might actually help solve the situation he's about to be in later. After Gui talks with Wooju about how he can't let her go through with the contract, he goes to stop it from happening, first going to Samson and then finally to the god of the underworld, where he ends up taking over the contract, meaning that he'll be taking Wooju's place in hell after she meets her quota, and she'll be able to forget her horrible past and be reincarnated. He does end up telling Wooju that she doesn't need to worry about the contract, but not how he handled it. He lies and kind of tells her that he sort of blackmailed the god of the underworld with some information he'd been holding on to, but that all she needs to know is that he handled it, and she's like, great, I'm not going to hell. That's great. We end this episode with not really shocking to us as the viewer, but a shock to Wooju. After all this time, Wooju finally starts to figure out who Gui really is. While at the supermarket, she sees Yurin and Kongbei putting carts away together and overhears Kongbei using certain lines on Yurin that are very familiar to what the Crown Prince had once said to her. One being that, was this work for you? It was love for me. And when Kongbei compares Yurin to the carts, saying he wants to take her everywhere and give her all the nice things in the world, but can't bring her home, and that whenever he sees a cart, he is both in marvel and despair at the same time. This is very similar to the time the Crown Prince compared Wooju to the moon in the past in the previous line. very similar. After Yurin leaves, Wooju confronts Kongbei and asks him where he heard those lines. And he says, "Who do you think told me? Gui. Gui gave me those lines." She then starts to connect the dots about other things Gui has said that seemed familiar to her, and also his reactions to her talking about her past. And this is when she realizes that he's the crown prince and goes to confront him and ask him who he really is. Like, she doesn't want to believe it, but she's figured it out. And that's how they end the episode. Now, this episode wasn't horrible, but I was able to guess a lot of what happened, and I think I was also really tired last night, but I actually ended up falling asleep during this episode and having to rewatch a few parts before writing this recap, which sometimes is a sign that I'm starting to get a little blah about a drama, but I was still laughing. I loved the scenes of them trying to get Yurin and Kongbei together at the store. The comedy, I don't have any complaints about. But the writing, the story is a little textbook, or turning into a little textbook. And I feel like I'm seeing how things are going to progress and eventually end in this series. But there are some things I'm interested to see how they're going to bring out or bring up in the story, such as Kongbei and the fact that Gui doesn't know that Wooju had been pregnant when she died. That's still out in the air. I haven't really figured out how that's going to come about being exposed, but I'm betting that Gui is going to find out next episode or the episode after, and it's going to be Kongbei telling him once Kongbei finds out that Gui is actually the crown prince. I also see Gui somehow getting free of the contract, and Wooju is going to forgive him after some time. And it's going to be after Wooju finds out what the queen had been wanting to show her, which she'll either hear, I'm sure, from Won-young death when he thinks he's about to win, or maybe she'll see the queen in the spirit world now that she's dead again. Who knows? Either way, I think in the end, Gui and Wooju are going to forgive each other and end up being reincarnated and end up running a pop-up bar or something together alive. Because even though it seems like Gui thinks that if they're both reincarnated, they actually aren't ever gonna see each other again, like just because they loved each other in one lifetime doesn't mean they're gonna meet and fall in love again. So he thinks they're just gonna be reincarnated after he helps her and he's never gonna see her again. But I feel like to make this a happy ending, they're gonna have to put them back together after they're reincarnated and let them live a life together, don't you? I think they're also gonna show the young actors in this role. That'd be really cute. I don't know if they would do that. I feel like they might. I would love to see that, but that's how I'm seeing that portion of it end. And then obviously Kongbei is going to fall in love with Yurin and get his powers neutralized, and then who knows, maybe after he passes away, he'll be reincarnated as Gui and Wooju's baby in their new life. I'm theorizing that that's how they're gonna end it. I feel like I'm very close, especially since the story, though good with its twists and turns, it is becoming a little textbook, and the fact that I'm guessing a lot of the outcomes, a lot of who is who and what is what, I feel like I'm close to figuring out what's gonna happen. But we still have 6 episodes left. I could be completely wrong. I actually would prefer that, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see. And that's how I'm gonna end this video. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments below what you're thinking of the series so far. Again, still think it's good, but it is getting a little textbook, but still loving it. But I want to hear what you guys think, and let me know how you think this series is going to end. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe for more recaps and give this video a thumb up. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next recap video. Until then, stay safe, and I'll see you later. Bye.